when I called, ye did not answer. When I spake, ye did not hear. For did evil before mine eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not. Behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. My servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Behold, my servant shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirits. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall slay thee, and call his servants by another name, that he'll bless himself.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Genesis. We're in chapter 24. Let's read it. And Abraham was old, and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all that he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. But thou shalt go unto my country and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. And the servant said unto him, Peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land. Must I needs bring thy son again unto the land from whence thou camest? And Abraham said unto him, Beware that thou bring not my son thither again. Okay. Beware thou that thou bring not my son thither again. The Lord God of heaven, which took me from my father's house, and from the land of my kindred, which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land. He shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son from thence. And if the woman will not be willing to follow thee, then thou shalt be clear from this my oath. Only bring not my son thither again. And the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and sware to him concerning that matter. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master, and departed, and was never seen again. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be irreverent, but it's just that thought, just because what people think, that, he's a servant, he probably wants to run away. For all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, unto the city of Nahor. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, even the time that women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, I pray thee, send me Godspeed this day, and show kindness unto my master Abraham. Behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. And let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, Let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink. And she shall say, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. Let the same be she that thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac. And thereby shall I know that thou hast showed kindness unto thy master. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, and with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well, and filled her pitcher, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her, and said, Let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. And she said, Drink, my lord. And she hasted, and let down her pitcher upon her head, and gave him drink. Now when he had done giving when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also, until they have done drinking. And she hasted and emptied her pitcher into the trough, and ran again to the well to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And the man, wondering at her, held his peace, to wit whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of 1/2 shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold, and said, Whose daughter art thou? Tell me, I pray thee, is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge in? And she said unto him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bore unto Nahor. And she moreover told him, We have both straw and provender enough, and room to lodge in. And the man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who hath not left destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I being in the way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren. And the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. And Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. And Laban ran out to the man unto the well. And it came to pass, when he saw the earring and bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when he heard of the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, This spake the man unto me, that he came unto the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the well. And he said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord, wherefore standest thou without? For I have prepared the house and room for the camels. And the man came into the house, and he ungirded his camels, and gave straw and provender for the camels, and water to wash his feet, and the men's feet that were with him, because he brought people with him. And there was set meat before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have told mine errand. And he said, Speak on. And he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord hath blessed my master greatly, and he has become great. And he hath given him flocks, and herds, and silver, and gold, and men servants, and maidservants, and camels, and asses. And Sarah, my master's wife, bare a son to my master when she was old. And unto him hath he given all that he hath. And my master made me swear, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife to my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, but thou shalt go to my father's house and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son. And I said unto my master, Peradventure the woman will not follow me. And he said unto me, The Lord, before whom I walk, will send his angel with thee, and prosper thy way. And thou shalt take a wife for my son of my kindred, and of my father's house. Then shalt thou be clear from this my oath, when thou comest to my kindred, and if they give not thee one, thou shalt be clear from my oath. And I came this day unto the well, and said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, if now thou do prosper my way which I go, behold, I stand before a well of water. And it shall come to pass that when the virgin cometh forth to draw water, I shall say unto her, and I say unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water of thy pitcher to drink. And she shall say, Both drink thou, and I will also draw for thy camels. Let this same be the woman whom the Lord hath appointed out for my master's son. I didn't expect that out to be there. And before I had done speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came forth with her pitcher on her shoulder. And she went down to the well, and drew water. And I said unto her, Let me drink, I pray thee. And she made haste, and let down her pitcher from her shoulder, and said, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. So I drank, and she made the camels drink also. And I asked her, and said, Whose daughter art thou? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bare unto him. And I put the earring upon her face, and the bracelets upon her hands. And I bowed down my head and worshipped the Lord, and blessed the Lord God of my master Abraham, which had led me in the right way to take my master's brother's daughter unto his son. And now, if thou wilt deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing proceedeth from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Lord hath spoken. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord by himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver and jewels of gold, and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah, and gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. And they did eat and drink, he and the men that were with him, and tarried all night. And they rose up in the morning, and he said, Send me away unto thy master. Oh, unto my master, sorry. I was trying to figure out where did I go wrong there. I read it wrong. And her brother and her mother said, Let the damsel abide with us a few days, at the least 10. After that she shall go. And he said unto them, Hinder me not, seeing that the Lord hath prospered my way, and send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, We will call the damsel, and inquire at her mouth. And they called Rebekah, and said unto her, Wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebekah their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant, and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, and said unto her, Thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. And Rebekah arose, and her damsels, and they rode upon the camels, and followed the men. And the servant took Rebekah and went his way. And Isaac came from the way of the well, Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the south country. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at eventide. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she had said unto the servant, What man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant had said, It is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her to her mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Okay, so that's a real long chapter, isn't it? And it's kind of a double chapter, isn't it? Because the same story gets told twice. Fortunately, we won't analyze every verse of that. We're going to probably conclude this chapter today, but there's plenty to talk about here, obviously. So many issues. So many interesting things to take away. So Abraham is taking care for the marriage of his son. That is his object here. Let's just start with the first few issues. He was well stricken in age. He's not, I looked ahead because I was like, well, how old was Abraham when he died? It was 175. Moses was the guy I remember who notably lived exactly 120. So the guy I was thinking of, the notable patriarch that lived that length in particular. But he's still got a lot of life ahead of him, actually. But he was old and well stricken. I mean, he was an old man. And he had blessed in all things. Well, I wonder what well stricken in age means, literally. So that sounds like bad, right? Like stricken. Yeah. The word stricken has nothing to do with striking. The whole phrase is like an idiom. It means the word, this is bow, which is just to go or come in. Like, literally in my song, the Doom of Babylon, I go, showed me Shaddai Yabo. As a destruction from the Almighty, it shall come. To come. And then the other word, so that's just the word, the Hebrew word for to come, to come in, to come to, like our word come, it means that. And Yom is the word for day, like Yom Kippur, you might have heard of. It means a day. He had come to days. And that's an idiom that means that he'd filled up his life pretty well. It does not mean he is old and decrepit. We may assume such things based on what it means to get old, our perception. But Abraham is about to father a bunch more kids. So he's not that stricken in that sense. So well stricken in age is a very, I would say, sketchy translation from the King James. Maybe that's what it meant. I don't know if that's what that idiom means. Like, he had come into days. He had come in days. Because literally there's only two words there, and come in days. Which means he was old. He was old and had filled up a lot of his time. You know, like it does mean something like he is, like it is some sort of idiom because they already have a word for old. You know what I mean? So to say to come into days is obviously some sort of word picture. Okay. So I don't know if it explicitly means decrepit. I don't think so, but like I said, because Abraham is not decrepit. I mean, he can still fire off. He's not firing blanks, you know? So, excuse me. And so he says to the eldest servant of his house, this may be the one who was originally supposed to inherit. But obviously, and like I said, these servants, they're not like interested in running off. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you have a relationship over so long a time. They're living in a different world, in a very dangerous world. Like I said, like we're going to see Joseph sold by his brothers to wandering traders. This kind of stuff happens. People just get sold off. So, oh, he's gone. I guess an animal killed him. You know, you could just do that, and people would be like, oh, you know, like there's no cops to go to, like missing persons, and send the photo around. Where'd our boy go? And so, and as Joseph became a faithful servant in Pharaoh's house and rose to prominence and didn't think of leaving, you know, didn't think to leave. Nope. And not merely, you know, because it's like, what is he going back to? His brothers betrayed him. What family, you know, his father, you know, but there's a situation there. And plus, you know, like by the time he comes into power, they come to him. And when it comes to a point where he could, if he wanted to, tell his master, I want to go seek after my father, it would not be, the Pharaoh wouldn't have been, oh, you're going to run away from me. It's like, you're my right-hand man. Where you go find out what your father's doing and take some time off. You know, I mean, whatever. I mean, because he'd grown close in the councils of Pharaoh. So he makes him swear. What's this by the hand under the thigh? I didn't understand that. And again, I think we're listening to a direct description of something that's some sort of gesture. Like if we were to take someone's hand, a ring, and I imagine like a word picture, because a lot of these things are idiomatic of like what, you know, you're taking an oath. You know what I mean? And so I'm seeing a guy seated on a throne like a judge or a king. And when someone comes before him, I could imagine like someone extending his right hand and grabbing the leg of the person as a sign of subjection. You know, and grabbing, you know, meaning of you know, like a servant to master. And he's saying, you know, he's bringing him into contact with him. And that kind of picture of someone clinging to the leg of the monarch, the clinging to the leg of the monarch, I think of where there was there not a woman at some point who's clinging to someone's leg? I've seen pictures of that in movies and stuff, like where someone is moving and they're grabbing at their leg to beg. So it's a position of subjection. Take your place before me as my servant, and now swear. That's what it's saying. You know, and so it's a picture of subjection and of fealty, I would say. Like that's what that imagery of the hand under the thigh. You know, I imagine, like I said, imagine putting your right hand under his leg. There's something it's a sort of an intimate thing. Like I said, because it's like the king would allow someone to come so close. You know what I mean? It's like it's a picture of a servant and his master. You know what I mean? Like they are pantomiming their relationship. You know, he waits with his hand under his thigh for his master's command. What would, I mean, that's the idea. I think that's the idea. I mean, it seems like, like I said, a lot of these things you can ferret out because the word, like I said, if it's a strange phrase, it may be somewhat idiomatic. Like as far as it's trying to make you think of something that to them would be a culture. For his culture and in his time, this makes perfect sense. Whereas to us, it seems slightly alien. It should. I mean, it's sort of like if I said, put your hand on the Bible and swear before me. You know what I mean? But for the servant, there's no Bible. It's Abraham whom he serves. You know what I mean? So he puts his hand under his thigh. And I will make thee swear by the God of heaven and the God of the earth. God of heaven and earth. He's not merely God of heaven, but God of heaven and earth. God of all, and by that encompasses all. And the God of the Jews and of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and of back to the ancient times when men called on him in the period before the flood. He was known to men, but they forgot him. They knew God and they honored him not as God, but and they forget God. Because they do not, as it says, they do not like to retain God in their knowledge. Because in some ways, it can be, if you want to do evil, it can be a bit burdensome, to have a conscience and to have God weighing in your mind. You know what I mean? Like to retain the knowledge of God in your mind while I want to do bad things, but I get this gnawing feeling I shouldn't. You know what I mean? They don't like to retain that knowledge, so they thrust that from them so that they can do what they will. And they reconstruct the world with a God, because the God that you serve, it sort of tells you what you should and shouldn't do. Whether you believe in God or not, you have something that's functioning as God, something that's telling you what the absolute rules of the universe are. You know what I mean? Some sort of standard. And for some people, that is, like if you're a psychopath, the standard may be if you don't get caught, it doesn't count. You can go do whatever you want. Do what you will, harm all. Who cares? As long as you don't get caught, or even if you do, so what? You had your time. I don't know, I've heard people talk. I mean, because people do go out and they construct a moral framework for themselves. You can see that in the ungodly, there is arising this sort of puritanical, oppressive morality. It's an oppressive morality of immorality. You must celebrate sexual deviancy. You know what I mean? Like, and if you don't, you're a bad person. You know what I mean? So that, they construct, that's not an image of God. That's an image of corruption that they've constructed as the governing reality of the world, which is sexual perversion is to be celebrated and not suppressed. Suppressed would be the proper thing to do. Each man should suppress their perversions themselves and keep them to themselves. Every man may take a wife and thereby relieve himself of sexual pressures. If he chooses well. All right, so Abraham will not allow his son to take a wife of the daughters of the Canaanites. There are a lot of good reasons for that. None of them are racial as far as I can tell. Because technically speaking, even though he talks about them like they're almost aliens, like I said, I think it is a cultural thing. Abraham was a stranger in a strange land. He was trying not to integrate with the Canaanites. If his son married a Canaanite, he would become essentially a Canaanite, and his children would be essentially Canaanites. She would be among her people. There's a principle they talk about in sometimes in animal husbandry and breeding, where you say you don't bring the buck to the doe, you bring the doe to the buck. With rabbits, for example, when you breed them, don't put a male rabbit in the female rabbit's cage. You'll have problems. You bring the female rabbit to the male rabbit. Now, I don't know if that applies always in human things or whatever, but sometimes that principle is a good idea, especially in this case, where you have a son, you don't want him to become part and one with these people, because that's what the marrying into them will do, especially with a daughter. Because especially in that culture with a daughter, because, everything's patriarchal, because you need a man to head out the house. Because it would be, a woman would have to inherit a house, just like we have women queens, right? But no women conquerors. Joan of Arc, not exactly a conqueror, you know what I mean? But about the closest you could get, perhaps. But we don't have a lot of empire builders from among women. It's just not one of their things they do. They may inherit, and this is something that's often said, that women will inherit things, like businesses, and they do start. It's very rude to say it otherwise, but it is true that it is more common for men to be engaged in these kind of activities. And certainly up till modern times, the role of women was much more limited because of their physical limitations, and it was a very physically based world. I mean, for most of human history, everything was based on manpower. There's no woman power. Woman power was to make more men. That's what women do primarily throughout history. And actually, that is the primary function. I'm not saying that men have some better. Men's function is to make sure the women have seed to produce those children. I mean, it's not. I'm just saying, that is over the eons. What else are we doing here except reproducing? Over the eons. I mean, because over the eons, all the works we do, the houses we build, the things we do on earth, they crumble to ashes and they're gone and forgotten. I don't know who I know who some of my ancestors were, but, on a certain side, like on the Stringini side, I don't know farther back than my great-grandfather. And that's where it ends. I haven't researched it a lot, but that's it. But, he doesn't want him to, I don't think it's a racial thing. It's a cultural thing. Because again, the Cain, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they're all related, right? And again, like I said, the Canaanites are never described as being black, so it definitely didn't, Ham didn't turn black or anything nonsense. All that stuff is just not true. I was going to call it nonsense, but it's just a bad interpretation. It's just reading into the Bible a kind of view of things that's just, one, it's not true. It's like the idea that the Hamites or the Canaanites were the only people who ever became slaves, because it was cursed be Canaan, servants of servants shall be. Oh, they were the only slaves ever? What? No, that's not what it even means. He wants him to go back to the country where he came from and get a wife from there. And then, and the servant says, well, what if she doesn't want to come? Then should I bring your son back there? Legit question. Should I bring, maybe if she won't come, I'll say, I don't want to leave my mother's house. Should I bring the buck to the doe? And Abraham said, beware that thou bring not my son thither again. Don't bring him back. Interesting. You know what I mean? Because if I look at it as an analogy for the faith, it's like he came out of Babylon, essentially, of the land that was, he came out of this place and to become something else. You know what I mean? To not live the life he had known, but to become something. And he's become it, what God had ordained for him to become. He's a prophet. He walks before God. He says it himself. I walk before God. He's a prophet. He speaks for God and God speaks to him. He's saying you're going back there to get someone from there. He wants them to be close in custom, no doubt, and not be related to the Canaanites, lest their families just become integrated into Canaan, which is not what is God's plan, is to make of Isaac a great nation, and of Abraham many nations. And of Isaac, actually, 2 nations come of Isaac. And I don't mean Israel and Judah, that's one nation, really. But though they are 2, official national governments at one point, but no, I mean Edom and Israel. Okay, so what if she's not willing? Don't bring my son back. And as an analogy for the faith, it's like our children are raised in this new place. We are strangers in a strange land. They are raised Christians in a Christian home. Because I was called out of, it goes back farther. Because I always feel like my dad had his notable conversion in the middle of his life. Not exactly in the middle, but it was, around 30. I had mine at night. I think I just turned 19, or was about to, somewhere around there. I forgot that time. I didn't mark that date on the calendar. I just, followed. I remembered my promise. I had an obligation to serve God because my life had been spared. I believed, even if it wasn't. It's like the Lord judges us based on that. If I believe He saved my life, well, then He did. As far as because, not in fact, but in judgment. Meaning that the fact that I believe that, just like when He says, you knew I was an austere man. You believed I was this way. So that's how I'm going to judge you. And so that's why I believe that when I meet Christ, I have an expectation of mercy. That He will say, well done, good and faithful, because I'm trying to be good and faithful. Like if I had to give an account, it would be nothing like I buried my talent in the earth. Like, well, Lord, I did my best with what you gave me, and I trust in your mercy you will accept it. And if He wouldn't, I always felt the same way. It's like, well, of course not. I don't deserve to be accepted. I don't come with that expectation. I just come with the expectation that He has said that I am accepted. He has made us accepted in the beloved. But, but what I came out, what I'm saying is my dad, when he was converted in the middle of it, like I said, a little older than I was, saw his life as genuinely changing direction from being pretty much an unbeliever, and not without being, consciously like a disbeliever. Where you're like, I don't believe that stuff. It's just like, I don't think about that stuff. But when that changes, like you try to raise up your kids in a certain way. And he tried to make changes in the way he was raising me versus the way he raised his earlier kids. And a lot of that was clumsy. But the point is, it's like you don't want to teach them, like he would say how Emery told me, his father taught him how to lie and taught him the facts of life in terms of, husbands and wives cheat on each other. And that's the way things work. Here's how to lie without getting caught. Here's how to bribe a policeman properly. Those were the kind of lessons he learned of his father. That was the culture of, that my family came out of. A little bit worldly wise. And so, but I can't go back to that. I can't send my children back to that world. How would I do that? Well, I could marry back. I can marry people who are steeped in that, who think I could find, I could have found a woman who was like unto that which the kind of mentality that my father was in before he was converted to Christianity, an unbeliever. That's why I say, don't marry unbelievers, and don't give your children to them. You know, I make it clear. It's like you gotta understand that you have to have certain core things in common, or your marriage will not endure without extreme effort. Extreme effort. It's already effort. You have to put effort in marriage anyways to make it work out. You know, very few people have magical marriages that just everything's perfect. It's like mine wasn't. People often think it is, because it has been very well. And we do get along, and it's been going well for a long time. We haven't had we've never had major conflicts that gone on and on and on. You know, we make things up, but we were both. One of the things I was going to say is this reminds me also when I read the story of him seeking Rebecca. So he takes 10 camels, like I said, and then he's never seen again because he runs off with all the wealth of his master. No, he faithfully finds, he finds a wife for the heir of his master, and he will die a servant to this house, which is not, this is what he does. This is his job. This is his identity. He's Abraham's right-hand guy. So I figure, and he wants, because he loves it. He's not in that position for no reason. He loves Abraham, and no doubt Abraham loves him. He was going to be his heir, but he's his most trusted servant. Obviously, he entrusts him with finding a wife for his son. That's an incredibly important task that any father would ask of someone who is not a family member. You know what I mean? So they go into Mesopotamia. Again, that's the area we know around the Tigris and the Euphrates right there. That's where Abraham came from, to the city of Nahor. Nahor being Abraham's brother. Now notice they mention Rebekah being daughter of Bethuel and Nahor at some point. But the point is, they didn't have a word for granddaughter, by the way. So he made his camels to kneel down with the city by. Okay, so he makes this prayer, right? Send me Godspeed this day. Show kindness to my master Abraham. O Lord God of my master Abraham. I like the way he does that. He immediately just Abraham says, so he talks to God. There's no disbelief. He just assumes my master has given me a Abraham's a guy who, the servant probably knew about the promises and stuff, and then the baby was born. So he's seen all kinds of things happen. So he's no stranger to the ways of Abraham, and to, he's obedient and clever also, because he immediately prays. Abraham doesn't go there and ask God to help you find her. He just does it because he's very wise, and that's why he's been chosen for this task. That's the thing, is if you got something important to do, appoint someone wise. Yeah, obviously. I stand here by a well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. Okay. He says, well, let it be this way. I'm going to say to the girls, right, let down the pitcher and let me to drink. And when she responds by giving me drink and saying, hey, I'll water your camels too, let that be the sign. And it's interesting because, it's like you usually want to, when you pray to God, you just ask for a sign. Just make it anything, Lord. Well, the funny thing is, how am I going to know what it is if we don't agree? You know what I mean? If we don't agree ahead of time on what the sign's going to be, how am I going to know that anything was signified? And that's the problem. You have to sort of designate. Otherwise, you're just interpreting omens. It's not really a sign. A sign has to be something you recognize immediately. It's like, oh, that's a sign. It's like a big old box with a word on it, that says exit. Something very, it's like, that's a sign. And so things that are like signs are signals, clear signals. That's what they should be. So he wants to be clear about this. I do think, all this puts me in mind of when I was seeking a wife. because I also, being mindful of the scriptures, I went about seeking a wife kind of methodically. I didn't have a servant to go send off. I didn't know where I was going to find her. Actually, I kind of did. And this is the truth. When I went looking for a wife, I didn't go out to the bars. I didn't go to the dance clubs. I didn't go to the place where the drunken girls are, dancing around, or not, even not drunk, where the girls are dancing around, showing off their bodies and tempting the men. I didn't go places like that. I went to Christian fellowship groups. I led Bible studies. And then the girls came to me, bring the dough to the buck. Again, I didn't go invade their spaces and try to be, and what kind of woman do you want for a wife? Do you want a Canaanite? Well, then go out to the nightclubs and go to the dance halls and go to the online apps and all that crap for hooking up, and find yourself a Canaanite whore. And when you marry her, you're going to reap the reward that everyone does who marries some Canaanite whore or Canaanite himbo, whatever. I don't know what to call it. Right? Stay away from the Canaanites. Stay away from the people who live a lifestyle that is contrary and have a culture that's contrary to Christianity. Don't choose your wife from among them. It's funny, there's this whole thing with incels, right? Involuntarily celibate young men. And these are young men who are basically disappointed fornicators. They want to go out and fornicate with the Canaanite women, but the Canaanite women won't have them because they're lower tier guys. They're not whatever. They don't have what it takes somehow. They can't get the girls, okay? They have all these theories about, there's these chads running around. They get all the girls. And again, you're talking about, you want to compete. You want to go out to the dance club where all the real buff guys and the slutty girls or whatever are all trying to have a meat market, right? And you come there, you're out of shape. You're some computer nerd and you can't pick up a girl. Well, you're just a wannabe citizen of Sodom who's disappointed that you can't live your little debauched lifestyle. I remember being young and trying to go out and I want to get laid and all that stuff. But you know what? I repudiated that stuff. And that's where I found a wholesome wife instead of, because you're not going to make a wholesome wife out of a woman you picked up in a bar somewhere. Now, she's someone who used to go to bars, but has seen the light and is coming to, and then, that's someone who has repented. That was me. I stopped going out to bars and places and parties where alcohol is served and like that, and started hanging out places where I would meet nice girls. Now, you want to find a wife, not of the Canaanites? Go find one at church. Go to a couple different. There's all kinds of Christian singles finding people. Finding someone compatible with you. There's all kinds of avenues to solve that problem. These people just want to hook up, and they're disappointed and bitter about it. But you know what? You deserve to be disappointed and bitter about it. You want to do a wicked thing, and you're not getting to do it. You know what I mean? And you're bitter about it. You are on the surest road to hell I could think about. You know what I mean? Just craving and lusting after this and anger, because oftentimes it leads to anger. Some people accept it because they, some men, not everyone, marriage isn't for everybody, okay? And it's okay if it's not for you. It is the solution to the sexual issue. You just got to find the right kind of woman. There's a lot of different kinds out there, So, what I mean? Meaning, that's part of the problem with all this gender crap is that it's like telling certain kinds of women that they're not really women because maybe they're a bit rough around the edges, or I don't know, they like sports or some garbage. They'd rather go hunting than sit around and embroider. That means they're not a woman. What kind of nonsense is this crap? That's not what I was growing up. When I was growing up, I was taught that girls could do anything. I never, as far as, I mean, and I mean that, obviously, meaning like they can go fish, they can run, they can ride bikes, they can get in a rocket and go to the moon, for all I care. As far as like, you can. Not every girl can do that, but a girl could do that. Wouldn't be the top choice for going to the moon, honestly, because you need it. Let me put it this way: the way they ferreted out the best men for those missions eliminated most men, and in the standards that for the original Apollo astronauts, no woman, maybe 1 in a million could qualify. I don't know. Maybe 1 in a billion. I don't know. Most men couldn't. So it's certain things. But I mean, in the sense of like all the normal things of life. I never told my daughter, "Oh, you can't do that. That's boy stuff. You can't wear pants. Pants are for boys. You can't play with that toy. That's a boy's toy. Here's a doll." It's a weird. Not that she liked dolls actually, but I mean, but different girls have different levels of interest in dolls. Some girls may not be interested in dolls at all. I think it's funny when they say boys don't like dolls. I'm like, you're kidding, because they just like different kinds of dolls. They like dolls that look like little monsters, but. My little boys, they would play with the baby, but the baby would become like a big monster that would stomp on the smaller little things. It's like all children take, when I was a kid, because I wasn't allowed to have figures because my dad thought it was somehow maybe idolatry or something, like graven images. Because like I said, he was reacting very strongly to his upbringing, which was ungodly. So he was like, no women and no action figures. I was allowed to have Star Wars, guys, but when He-Man came out, that was like, those monsters were demons. I don't know. It's like a lot of things. The things my parents tried hardest to forbid, I know in some ways, I think that a lot of people agree that, Sigmund Freud has been somewhat, discredited on certain, but on some things he was definitely dead on. Okay, he knew about some things, and when it comes to certain aspects of why people do things, repression, you gotta be careful about how hard you repress people's desires. They have, like that's why I tell my kids when they enter puberty, I tell them, you're gonna want sex, you're gonna see these things, you're gonna be interested. I talk about this. I talk about nocturnal emission. And that's it's good to talk about that because I'm like, that's your release. This myth that here's the thing. And I'll talk quite frankly. When I was a kid, when I was a young adult and an adult, the things that the corrupt way that sexual information came down to me caused me so many problems. So many problems. So much heartache. So much confusion. So many wasted moments of sadness. And, it's just stupidity. Because I didn't have a proper understanding of the human relationships like marriage and stuff like that. Like what was my place in it? Was it really, they were forbidden? Were girls really all evil? It seemed to me they were. I mean, I thought there was a plausible argument. I mean, just looking at the examples around me. But then I remember my grandmother. I thought, well, she's not evil. Or she seems rendered harmless now. It's another thing my grandfather told my dad. He said, don't expect to marry a woman like your mother. She's 1 in a million. Well, I think he's foolish. You know what? I tell my kids to look for a woman like your mother. Or if you don't like things about her, shift things around, but there are certain things you want. Recognize what you want in life, the kind of life you want to live, the kind of relationship, what's important to you, your priorities. And you want to make sure that a lot of that matches up. Even if you have a lot of opposite things going on, because opposites attract, but let those opposites be things like the way we look, personality things, gifts. Like my wife and I have a ton of opposites. We have actually, we took personality tests. Our personalities are precisely the opposite, which I think is, I like, but our interests are 100% the same. So there we have two very different people, very attracted to each other, but in the same common goal, interest, working together. And that's where, people talk about diversity being a strength. Yes, diversity of gifts is a strength. Diversity of personality and that can be strengthening as long as they're not, toxic personalities. Like, there's books out like the No A-Hole Rule and stuff. There are certain kinds of personalities that, as the scriptures say, and I've said this about church, you just can't have fellowship with these people until they repent because they're so destructive. That's why there are, as much as we default to mercy, we're not really the judges as far as God is judge, but we have the power in the church to cast people out of our fellowship, to deliver them unto Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme, as Paul said. So there's some, there is some need for discipline within the faith. And it's discipline, though. It's not any sort of, I don't get to judge another man's servant. Even like people like Arnold Murray, I've condemned his works. I've described them. I don't like the way he manipulates people. I don't like the flattery. You notice I don't flatter my audience and say, oh, you people are so smart for being my students. It just makes my skin crawl, the thought of talking like that. And maybe I just have a high level of conscientiousness or something like that makes me notice that stuff and be... No, I know. Sometimes I think it's crippling, actually. But it's also important. Meaning being too conscientious can make you slow everything down when you need to not suffer over all those details all the time. This is one of my flaws. The details being too... That's one of the reasons I do this study like this, so I can it's for me to let go and to just let things not be perfect. Because they never were to begin with. That's the funny part. I used to edit all my studies, get all the things but it's still not perfect. Okay. But this reminds me, I was looking for a woman. I didn't tell him, oh, let her do this and that. Because I went out. The reason it makes me think of that is because he had a plan. And the first girl that came out just immediately did it, right? I had a plan too. I wasn't like him. I didn't have this mentality like, oh, I'm looking for the one God has chosen for me. I didn't have because this guy had the sense that he's on a mission from God to find this woman. I thought it was a mission for me, not from God. I don't think for him it was I'm not going to be the father of the Hebrew of the Jewish people or whatever. So it's not that kind of an important mission where I felt but to me it was important. So I had a plan. That's why I say you should have a plan. I was I'm going to date as many girls as possible, meet as many girls as possible. And instead of trying to get them to like me or trying, because that was my old strategy, try to get the girls to like me so I could get in their pants. Ha ha ha, you douche. No, I was not going to try to get them to like me. I was just going to be me. I was going to be Mr. Whatever I am. That's how they found me, as I am. That's how my wife found me, as I am. That's how she fell in love with me, and they didn't. And that's good, because I don't want to, why should I... Don't alter your character to impress a woman that you don't even know if you want her. She's pretty. There's lots of pretty girls. There's plenty of pretty girls. The prettiness is all over the place. And, and even if they're not, whatever, maybe they're not so hard to look at, right? What are you? Are you so handsome? Again, we can't be so, I'll tell you this, I didn't have any beauty standard. I was sort of floating to the Lord, I won't accept this woman unless she's hot or something. That's ridiculous. I was looking for a woman whom I had read these things and I was thinking, where's my Rebecca, where's my Rachel, so to speak? Because I remember a friend of mine saying he was looking for his Rachel. And again, because there was Rachel and Leah. Rachel was the beautiful one, supposedly, and Leah was the one with the weak eye or whatever. Not as striking, suppose. doesn't mean she was ugly. People often will drag Leah like she was ugly, but the striking daughter was Rachel, right? And people fall in love based on looks and stuff, and that's fine. But the point is, you should think first. Looks can come second. Like I said, there's a lot of different. You can get used to people, and there's a lot of different looking, good looking people, or at least whatever. Looks shouldn't be your primary concern. Come on. I only say that because I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say for me it always was something that it was important from the time of my youth, and I don't know how to get that out of me. I don't know how to take that vanity away that was like sort of inculcated. Because it kind of helped me. It helped me avoid fornication because there were times when I was young where older girls who were obese or unattractive in some other way tried to make advances on me, and I fled from it. Because mostly not because of righteousness, but because of vanity. Because I did not want to be, I didn't, they weren't attractive enough, and they were obese. And I don't mean to be vain, but I confess when I met my wife, when I went out, there was a point in which I wasn't looking at her like that at all, but I did at one point. Right before I decided she was the one, I looked at her carnally and I thought, is she attractive? Because the funny thing is, I was not thinking about that. I was teaching the Bible and this person was just there. And then suddenly she asked me to go to a carnival with her. And then I realized I kind of wanted to marry her. I couldn't ask her to marry me at that point because she was the one. It's not because she was good looking, though, but it was because she was so into the Bible. That's all I saw to begin with. Someone who was curious about the scriptures, someone who wanted to listen to someone talk about the scriptures, someone who would be conversing with me about the scriptures, someone who could be like I don't need just a woman, I need a brother, a sister, and a mother, like in the faith. Because though I may be a father in some ways I'm still a boy. And I need to learn. Like I said, we're all still in the womb in some ways and need to learn. We don't have much time left, but I don't really think there's much more to say. Let's just look along. Let's see if there's anything more I could add. Well, the virgin part. A virgin, neither had any man known her. Because virgin probably is Bethuel, which means like a young maid. And that's the same word used like in Isaiah that they often say, it doesn't say a virgin, it says a young maid. And Bullinger points this out. Well, a maid can be presumed to be virginal. It's sometimes they add on, neither had any man known her. She was a virgin and she was a virgin, so to speak. Meaning this word does not convey specifically that aspect of virginity that we think of as, of technical virginity. This word does not convey that explicitly. And so since it is not explicit in that word, they add neither had any man known her. Because that specifies that she is, not only young, but also marriageable. Because a girl that had been about with men would not be considered for a wife very often. That's just, men wanted to marry a girl who had not been with other men. And Jesus himself gave that as a reason for divorce, saving for the cause of fornication. Because that adultery is already baked in the cake. Adultery, he didn't need to mention adultery. Adultery was punishable by death. And therefore, that's like a divorce anyways. So yeah, you can get a divorce for adultery. You can get a divorce for... Well, but as Jesus said, this is suffered because of the hardness of our hearts. God from the beginning had not made it so, but he made man and woman, and that the two should become one flesh. The man should leave father and mother and cleave unto his wife. So, like I said, the most thing I can gain from this is the things I've said, is like considering how we go about finding a spouse. It's a very important thing. We want to be, as Christian, like I said, as Christians, go where the Christians are. Don't go to Canaan. Go back to Mesopotamia where you start. Now, we know that Laban later on, he has idols and stuff. And Abraham comes from it's not clear if he had worshipped many. He may have at one time worshipped many gods because that's what the way of the world was going. I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying it was in the culture. Laban has gods. As far as he has the figures of them, because we know this because Rachel takes them for some reason. Okay, so she waters the camels. They have this little powwow. I guess I guess I should talk about a bit more of it instead of just. I want to just blast over this chapter and just go on to the next chapter, really, because we have sort of we could pick out more stuff to talk about, but I just want to figure out if I was going to pick up in this chapter, where would I have to pick up? So we talked about a lot of these issues with the daughter of Bethuel. She fulfills the things that for the sign. He brings out this earring. Laban now, we get a little preview of him. This is our first view of Laban, and he's kind of an interesting guy because he's the father of the wives of Jacob, and he's a bit of a underhanded dealer and a little opportunistic. And so him running here, it gives you a little, you feel like it's written there for a reason, because it's sort of introducing you to Laban as this sort of busy little kind of, what would I call him? He's busy about things, and he's not always up to good. But he also understands, like, he knows how to act as somebody who has money, man. He knows how to respect persons. Laban does. When he sees this traveler, rich, taking one of the girls off our hands, potentially, he's down there. Hey, we've made everything ready for you, buddy. Come on in. He's excited. Good old Laban. Because they hear this story, they believe it. There's no doubting. It's too incredible to. He's like, I'm Abraham's servant. Abraham this. Abraham. They know who Abraham is, and he brings them many precious gifts. So this is all later on. It's gonna. When Jacob comes, Laban's pleased to see him. He doesn't want him to leave actually when he comes back because having him in his house is a blessing to him. So he describes, there's a part where he describes Abraham's wealth and the presence of Isaac and how he says this thing about the Canaanites. He retells the whole thing. That's what I'm saying. He retells it from the beginning. And then, and he also says, if she won't come, you're free. It's going to all be blown up if the girl won't come. It's all up to Rebecca in some way. She could ruin the whole thing. I mean, potentially, but of course not. She won't. She too is, she's probably curious about this thing. Like, to go, it's probably quite exciting. I mean, me, the Lord, and I was chosen for this. It can be kind of intimidating, but also intriguing, right? It's exciting. Leave my mother's house to go to this man who's going to inherit this major thing, and like they've been sending, they need. This is something that makes her probably feel incredibly special. Chosen by God. How could she say no? Well, people could, I suppose. But not Rebecca. So, and then he recounts his sign that he requests and how she does it to the end. And then they say, after he just does all that, and like I said, this chapter is literally almost like a duplicate of itself. Which I don't want to read it again tomorrow. That's what, But because, I don't think we need to, because we're going to finish this in just a minute here. Yeah, so they say the thing proceeds from the Lord. We can't speak to thee bad or good. We can't say, what, when they say that, we can't speak bad or good. There was some other thing that came up, a first time of a phrase. Oh, possess the gates of the enemy. Does that come later? Yeah, actually, in fact, here's what we'll do. Bad or good. We'll just say we're going to start at verse 51 tomorrow. Or, yeah. You go ahead and take her. And then they ask the 10 days. And we're not going to read the whole chapter. I think we will literally just pick up at verse 51 and then go into the next chapter. Okay, that'll work. Or something like that. Because I do think I don't want to just blast through this. We'll probably blast through it tomorrow if we're necessary. Well, yeah. It's all right. We'll get it. We'll get through that and we'll into it. I don't want to just end the chapter. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I want to read that last part and maybe save 5 minutes worth of things about it. All right. So we'll do that tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back again. Until then.
Because when I called, he did not answer. When I spake, he did not hear. For did evil before mine eyes, and did choose that wherein I delighted not. Behold, my servant shall eat, but he shall be hungry. My servant shall drink, but he shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but he shall be ashamed. Behold, my servant shall sing for joy of heart, but he shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirits. And ye